everyone. I'm Beth, and I am an alcoholic. I'm also suffering from a head cold, so I apologize. Normally, I have a really sweet, angelic voice, so I really hate that you don't get to hear it. So I'm really honored that Brian asked me. I always get so nervous, like right before I get up to speak. And I've noticed the last couple times before I would get to that day, I wouldn't get nervous, and I would get nervous about not getting nervous. And then sure enough, on that day, like, I want to throw up and all that good stuff. But I'm really glad to be here and to share what experience, strength, and hope that I've gotten from the program of Alcoholics Anonymous. Excuse me. So like Brian said, I am sober. And the day that I decided to get sober was September 6th, 2018. I have a home group. It's Discovery Group of Raleigh. We meet at the Fairmont United Methodist Church in Cameron Village on Friday nights at 8 o'clock. My sponsor is also a member of that home group, and her sponsor is also a member of that home group, which is really cool that we get that connection every week. I do have a service position in that home group, and I do other various service things. So that's just a little about my life, I guess, in AA. But you're here to hear what it was like for me when I was drinking, what happened, and how this program has ultimately changed my life. So when I was 16, I took my first drink, and I was always like a really weird kid. Like, I kind of fit in, but I kind of didn't. I grew up in a really religious home where there was no alcohol, no nothing. But I lived with my grandparents. So my biological dad would have me every other weekend or something like that. And I would see a lot of full-blown alcoholism take effect in someone's life. And I only say that because he says that he's an alcoholic. But so I kind of had the best of both worlds, where I would be with my grandparents, safe and sound, nothing would harm me, and then I would be with my biological dad, who would take me to his friends' parties, and I would ride on the back of their mopeds, and like they would try to get me to curse and drive a car when I was like 6 or something, and it was really interesting growing up in that dynamic. But so I always had the idea of like, alcohol is bad and alcohol is the best thing ever. And I don't know if I realized that I kind of struggled with that until I actually took my first drink. And it's the typical thing where I was kind of weird, so I never really got invited to parties or anything like that, but I would see people like drinking, in high school, and I'm like, I want to do that. Like, I just want to do that. I want to live that life. And so one day, something traumatic happened to me. I broke up with my boyfriend, and I called my friend, and I was like, I'm going to get drunk. Let's do this. And that was my first experience with drinking, was I knew in that moment, something bad had happened to me, and I need to get drunk to forget about it or to ease the pain or whatever. So my first drink ever was a Miller High Life, which, if that is not super alcoholic, I don't know what is, because that is not a good beer at all. It was her dad's that she stole out of the fridge, and so that night I didn't really get to where I wanted to be, so nothing crazy happened. But then from there, I was still not getting invited to parties because I was still kind of a weird in-between kid, and I finally did. So I finally got invited to a party, and I got so wasted. I'm still in high school at this point, that I had kind of like jumped into someone's bed and then tried to punch someone in the face, and then I'm like getting sick in the bathroom, and then the same guy that I punched in the face, like I'm trying to kiss, and just that is pretty much sums up my whole drinking career. When I was out, like that was what I did. I started fights, and then I wanted to make out with you, and it was just an all over, just emotional explosion on all spectrums. And so first party I ever went to, I was told that I was not ever going to be invited back. So that sucked. And really, like I said, from there, that was my behavior when I drank at parties. I knew that this thing, alcohol, was what I needed to just escape, and I wanted to get as drunk as I possibly could anytime I got the chance. I didn't always get the chance in high school, though. But anytime I did, it was just that was my goal, was to get totally obliterated. And so I worked my way through high school. I do go to college for like a year and a half, 2 years. But even towards the end of that, I just fell into the whole, I got a boyfriend and it was emotionally abusive, and we were drinking a lot. And so, I ended up skipping a lot of class and sleeping in, and I blamed it on depression or being homesick. But really it was just, all I wanted to do was drink, and I wanted to, build my life around partying and going out and having fun. I was a decent student, but I could never make it to class. So one day, after a whole semester of not going to class and sleeping all day, partying all night, I called my mom, and I'm like, I want to come home. My grandma, who I call my mom, I want to come home. I'm good. I just need to get away from this place. And in that thinking, I'm like, okay, well, if I leave here, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to be home. It's going to be great, So I go home, and I'm living with my grandparents, and I start sneaking wine into their house, which no alcohol is allowed in my home. And I start sneaking wine, and, I have a job at my aunt's company, and so I have a set, job, set pay. I didn't have any bills or anything, but I had no purpose. All I wanted to do was go out with my friends and drink, and that was what I revolved my life around still. And so after that period, I end up getting married, because I guess that's what you do when you're an adult and you kind of like somebody. And particularly this guy, he drank the way I did at the time, and he was in the military, so he wanted to get married kind of quickly. Not saying that is a normal thing, but he did. And so we got married, and I thought, okay, this is a great opportunity for me to get out of my parents' house. He didn't want me to work, which I thought was awesome. So we can drink, I can stay at home and do whatever I want, and life's going to be great. And life was not great. There was a lot of, it was just such an abusive, volatile relationship. And, being military, they deploy, so when he would leave, I would take those opportunities to really drink the way that I wanted to drink, which was alone, a lot, and for as long as I could tolerate it before I passed out. And, I remember we lived in this, I don't know if you're familiar with Fayetteville, it's where I was living at the time. But I lived in Haymount, so it's like this cute little area, lived right behind Terry Sanford High School, and we had this cute front porch, and I would bring all of my beer or all of my wine or whatever it was I was drinking that night, and I would chain smoke and just stay up all night long, sobbing, listening to music. Vanderpump Rules had just started airing, and those were my friends. And they were my friends for a long time. I would drink with those people because, like I mentioned before, I would get so obliterated at these parties, and that my behavior was just so erratic, and I eventually just kind of got cut off from everyone that I was able to go out with because they just didn't want. I was a flight risk, like, you know. I mean, I remember I was at one party. It was the last time that I ever saw one of my really good friends, and I was drinking Malibu straight out of the bottle, out of the freezer, and this guy was like, maybe you should slow down. And I turned around and I punched him in the face. Because you don't tell me to stop drinking. Like, who are you? So I punched him in the face, and then it's this whole big drama, and I can't stop, and I just have these flashbacks of, like, you know, me being outside, and he's trying to apologize, and I'm chewing him out, and then all of a sudden I start telling him I'm, like, from New Jersey, and I'm gonna, like, get the mob on him. Like, these are things that I said that are so embarrassing today. And then I tried to kiss him, because that's what I did. I mean, it was just the weirdest stuff. And you know, what's funny is, like, well, this, I guess it's not funny, but, like, sometimes when I think about those moments in my life when things like that actually were real, like, I actually really did those things, you know, it stings a little. Like, I was thinking about that story yesterday, and I could kind of feel, like, my heart drop a little in my stomach, and I'm like, man, how can, so embarrassing. Like, if I today were around that person, woo, they would need to be out. And that's exactly what happened. I guess I passed out on the couch, and I woke up, and my best friend of years basically told me that I should leave and never talk to her again. And I have never spoken to her again, which is tough. But so that was just a really awesome story to tie in there. But so I'm married at this point, and I'm doing a lot of alone drinking, isolated drinking, which really became what I did. You know, after I lost all of my friends and, everyone that I thought was important to me, I knew that the only way I could drink the way that I wanted to was alone. And so when my husband would deploy, I would just drink like that. And then, of course, on my end, there was a lot of infidelity where I would go out to bars or clubs, and, I went to a gay bar, and of course I'm going to go home with someone from there. Like, that just makes so much sense. And it really drove him nuts to the point where he really wanted to control me. He wanted to, I wasn't allowed to work at that point, and I really wasn't allowed to go out with my friends. And today I understand, but back then it was like, no way. Like, I'm going to defy everything that you say to me. So I did it even worse. And towards the end of that marriage, I had started an affair with someone, and I kind of woke up one day and was like, if I really loved this person, I wouldn't be cheating on them all the time. And so I knew it. I gotta get a divorce. I just gotta get out of this. And so I made that split decision, and I told him, and you know, he was deployed when I told him that I wanted a divorce and that I was done. And of course, like, the mental wreckage that happens, you know, I can only imagine what that must have felt like. But I was gonna do me, and you know, it was a good intention, hidden with a lot of selfish and poor motives, which I've done a lot of. And so we get a divorce, I leave, and I go back to live with my grandparents. And so I'm with them, and I found a new boyfriend to move in with, and that went pretty okay until my new boyfriend would come home, and I would be like passed out and throw up everywhere on the couch. And, there was a lot of finding Beth in very, horrible situations. One night I had thrown up on the couch, and I tried to clean it up as best as I could. I threw the pillows outside, and I took stuff and I put it in the washing machine. Of course I left the back door open so our animals could get out. And I pass out, and he comes home, and he's like, "What happened?" And I'm like, "I don't want to talk about it." And but of course I had to talk about it. But it just got worse and worse. And so after one really bad night, I decided I am done drinking. I cannot drink well, so I should just stop. And I did for about a year and a half. Excuse me. So I did for about a year and a half, and in the middle of that year and a half, I had a mental breakdown, and I quit my job, and I moved to the mountains, and I smoked a bunch of weed, and I had some spiritual fix that I needed, and then I came back, and excuse me. So I, my life was not going well. Even though I wasn't drinking, I was just as miserable and just as alone and just as insecure and inferior to everyone as I was when I was drinking. And so one day, after that year and a half ended, I was starting a new job, and I decided, I think I'm fine. I think it's cool to have a drink. And I got so drunk that night that the next day at my job, luckily it wasn't like an intense job or anything like that. I was running back and forth to the bathroom throwing up all day. And I remember telling the woman that was training me, I was like, "I'm so sorry, I don't know, I haven't drank in so long, this is just crazy, right?" And of course she's like, "I don't care, I get paid minimum wage, it's fine." But thus ensued a lot more heavy drinking, and of course I knew that I was embarrassed by my drinking. The thought after that of doing a program or going to treatment or even stopping drinking was not, I'm fine. I just like to drink whole gallons of wine at a time, and that's okay. But it wasn't okay. It was it was farthest thing from okay. And so I eventually ended up moving out, getting my own place because I didn't want a roommate. And the year and a half that I lived alone was just hell. It literally was a torture chamber that I put myself in. I was drinking a lot. And I wasn't drinking every single day or like every time I woke up. But when I did drink, as soon as I took the first drink, like I couldn't stop. And I remember, the anxiety of like, I would always get the really big bottles of red wine. Like towards the end, red wine was like my thing. And I would control it by only buying one big bottle of wine. But I remember as time progressed, just having this awful anxiety, seeing like half the bottle empty and having a full glass that I've taken maybe a couple of sips out of and being like, oh my God, it's 10 o'clock. I need more alcohol. Like, there's no way this is going to be enough. And just that feeling of like a whole, like pretty much a whole bottle left, a small bottle left of wine, I knew it wasn't going to be enough for me. And it would terrify me. I mean, I'm sure a lot of you know that feeling, but it's like, if I could even think of words to describe that feeling, it probably wouldn't even like amount to the fear that I would feel not having enough. And so I made lots of trips back and forth to different stores because I didn't want to see the same people that I was buying this alcohol from. So a lot of drunk driving, a lot of careless, moments. And I remember, red wine is pretty like potent to me. And so I'd get through that whole gallon, maybe more. And I think it's about a gallon. I don't know. But I would get through that and maybe a little more. And I would start feeling the shame of like, oh my God, how did I get here? Like, I got to get it out. And so for a long time, months, I would make myself throw up after I would drink that much. And this was like a weekly thing, happened multiple times a week for a long time. And I just remember the visions of like me over the toilet, like throwing this up and crying, and sometimes like, peeing on myself. And just being like, why? Like, why did I do this? Just like crying and sobbing and begging God to save me. Like, I'm a good person. I am involved in my community. I have a job. I have a car. I teach vacation Bible school at my church. Granted, I smoke weed before I do it, but I do these things. Like, why won't you save me? And it's just an awful time. And so I got this opportunity to move to Raleigh for a job. And so, of course, I was like, sign me up. Buy me the first ticket out of this place. And the first thing I thought, too, when I was getting ready to move was like, man, I'm going to go to a new place, and I can drink how I want, like, because no one knows me. And I was essentially just running away, but it actually ended up to be a really beautiful thing. But so I got to Raleigh in August of last year, and I moved into a room that I rented out of a house, and it was teeny tiny, probably the size of this podium. And, I had my bed, my desk, all of my furniture, my cat. She lived in that room with me, so, like, I was just in this tiny space. And I remember my roommate drank, but I would always, like, sneak beer, like, under my bed. And my wine went in my desk. It had like a open like thing and some drawers on the side. And I'd always hide my wine like in my desk. And so, as soon as I would get home, not every night, and that's how I thought I wasn't an alcoholic. I don't drink every day. Like, that's what alcoholics do. But it was the way that I drank and the way that I obsessed over it. And as soon as I would come home, I would just start drinking. And so I moved to Raleigh in August of last year, and I got sober a month later because there was one night where I was kind of running out of money, all of, this facade that I had built up. I had sort of isolated myself from so many people. I had run away from everything. My facade of my little fake empire, I guess, of such a good person that I am, was starting to kind of crumble around me. I was running out of money. I wasn't going to be able to pay my rent, and and when I think about it, it's like I'm not going to have enough money for alcohol. And at this point, I had to stop smoking weed for my job, which I know it's an outside substance, but it is part of my story. So that exacerbated the drinking tenfold. So I'm miserable. Everything's falling down around me. I thought, I moved here to have a new life. Where is my new life? Why don't I have it? And I guess God was like, okay, I'll give you one. And so one night I came home. It was 7 o'clock in the evening. I immediately pour a couple glasses of whiskey with this topper stuff that has alcohol in it. I don't know. I was just drinking whatever at that point. I had a couple glasses of whiskey. I didn't want to drink all the whiskey because it was my roommate's, so then I switched to beer. And so I drank 7 or 8 beers, and then I finished the half a bottle of Moscato that was hidden in my dresser. And I checked the clock. It's 4 o'clock in the morning at that point, and I wasn't drunk. It was, the worst feeling of, wow, I am here. And of course in that moment, I'm just pissed. I've been drinking for 9 hours straight, trying to get so drunk, and I just can't. And so first I was mad, well, I guess I'm gonna go to bed now, WTF. And I really was pissed. And when I woke up, I went to bed at 4 and I woke up at 6 a.m. And I never had a hangover. I don't ever remember feeling jittery or anything. It was just the weirdest. I should have been off my tail, with the amount that I consumed. But I woke up and I was so sad. That anger just immediately flushed out of me, and just sadness overwhelmed me. And I had kind of been around Alcoholics Anonymous through family groups, and I would go as support for people that I knew that had the problem with alcohol. And, when I woke up, the first thing I did was I looked up AA, because I knew, what the heck? I am not okay at all. And so I just kind of looked up a meeting. I made sure it was a closed meeting, because I thought that if it was an open meeting, I might just, I'm actually okay, this is good. But I was bottomed out. Even though, my world around me from the outside looking in didn't seem awful. Seemed okay, I guess, to some people. But the way that I felt, that hopelessness and that just despair of, what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do, right? And so I went to my first meeting that day, and what's really cool is I kind of thought okay, I'm gonna slip in, slip out. I'm okay. I might keep coming back. I don't know what would have happened if this particular scenario didn't play out, but I got my white chip because I had just seen other people do it, and I'm a follower, in many ways. So I was like, well, I guess that's what I gotta do. I don't know. And so I got my white chip, and before I left, it was almost like I turned around to leave, and instantly a barrier of women are around me. And at first I'm like, whoa, y'all need to back up. But they were just so happy and wanted to know my name when all I was the girl that, while I was doing all of that drinking and throwing up and crying, I would get anxiety attacks going to the grocery store or going to the gym. I did not want to be seen. And to have all these women around me at that time was really scary. But they all seemed so happy. Man, you're at an AA meeting and you guys are just something's wrong with you. I'm not okay with this. And it's such a foggy feeling when I recall it. But they all came up to me, introduced themselves. They gave me this book, which is a meeting guide, and they all wrote their numbers down on it. And I don't know why, but someone had told me, you should reach out to these people. And so when I got home, I was still living in that, I call it a drunk den because that's how it felt. I was still living there, and I get to my room, and I just go down the list, and I text everyone on that page. And one girl in particular, really was conversive with me. We were having a conversation. And I felt really comfortable, she was sharing, it's going to be okay. I'm going to go to coffee tomorrow and to a meeting. Do you want to come? And so I just was like, yeah, I guess so. I don't have any friends. I have nothing. So I will go to coffee. I have the $2 to spare. And so I went the next evening to coffee, which I still go to, and it's been a really big part of my recovery. So I went to coffee, and all these women were sharing their experiences about their drinking and even about their living conditions. I wouldn't do my dishes for a month. I would pile my clothes so high on my bed that I started sleeping on my couch for 4 months. I wouldn't clean my cat litter box. I was kind of disgusting when I was drinking. And, I even heard women share about that without me, saying it. And it was almost you do that too? Yeah, we have, crap on our floor. It's awesome. And we went to a meeting, which is now my home group. And at that meeting, I shared, and I don't know what led me to share at all, but I just remember sobbing, and I was like, I'm so scared. I don't know what's going to happen to me. I need help. Save me. And I was just so in the midst of just the despair. I pretty much was willing to do anything that any one of those people were telling me to do, which is a good place to be because I was in a lot of pain. And so I just kept coming back, and I started working with that same woman that asked me to go to coffee, and she took me through the steps, and I'll never forget doing my fifth step for the first time. I remember it was when the hurricanes were coming through, and we went to this nature park that was on a river, and we sat there, and it was cloudy and windy, and it was just, we were in the elements. It wasn't raining yet, and we sat there for like 4 or 5 hours, and I did my 5th step. And, you know, looking back at that moment, like, I was changed there. And when I worked through the 1st step, she just asked me the questions that you ask, and she kind of was like, do you think about drinking a lot? And I'm like, yeah, who doesn't? And she's like, would you say that when you start drinking, like, can you control it, or do you just, like, keep drinking? And I knew, like, working that 1st step, like, on facts, like paper, like, I'm an alcoholic because I have the mental obsession and that physical allergy. Once alcohol was my solution to all my problems. And once I took that 1st drink, I could not stop. So that really helped me, like, facts. When I start to deny those facts, I'm like, wait a minute. Like, I actually, like, have times and moments and memories that I've written down. And then working the 2nd and the 3rd step, I had a higher power before I came in, but I really think that because I was so desperate and I was so helpless that I don't know if I would have denied that I needed help. And I knew that no human power could keep me sober. I couldn't keep me sober, and no one else can keep me sober. And so I moved on, and I had a really cool experience with the 3rd step. I was listening to the radio, and this song came on, and it was I Surrender All, like that hymn, and I just remember like sobbing and really thinking like, holy cow, like this song came on for me, like I have to just give this in. And so today I'm so grateful to like have had that experience and kind of really just not fight, like, okay, I can't keep me sober, something else has got to keep me sober, I don't care what it is, but it just needs to be something that's not me, because I'm not doing a good job. When it came to the 4th step, okay, so the first time I did the 4th step, I was actually really excited because I saw that word resentment, and I was like, yeah, buddy, I'm about this. Like, I'm going to talk about all those MFers that, like, I hate, because I loved hate, rage, and anger. And when I did my 5th step, I quickly found out that this is actually about me and my problems. And I didn't necessarily like that. Even though I did feel very different after that 5th step, I did kind of combat my sponsor a lot through that. And her kind of just telling me, like, good luck with that. You might drink over that. Like, it really was like, I don't want to do that. Just help me. I have since had the opportunity to work the steps again. So each time, they have all felt a little different. So the first time I did 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6, 7 was very, very different feeling. Like, the 1st step I was kind of like, okay, I'm actually like, yeah, I'm good with the alcoholism. Like, I know I got it. I will never be okay, but I can get well. 2nd and 3rd, the 2nd time I did it, my sponsor had me write down a wanted ad for what I wanted my higher power to be. So it wasn't just kind of ask and tell. It was very like, what are you looking for? And I gave all of the characteristics of what I wanted a higher power to be. And it was, caring, thoughtful, guiding. My interpretation of a higher power was someone that could discipline me and lead me in the right path, remove me from that self-centeredness. And then when I went to do my fourth step the second time, I was terrified. It was the weirdest thing. Like, I just couldn't even, I was so scared, to do it. But we put a timeline on it, and my fifth step took forever. And I don't really know why, but it was very in-depth. And I'm grateful for that, but when I was living in that kind of 2-month period where I was doing my fifth step meeting with my sponsor every week, I was I was getting kind of weird. But it was finally over, and I truly felt like that relief of whoa, I am out of my fog. I can see clearly, being thoroughly honest with that fifth step was super pertinent for me, because when I went to go do 6 and 7, my second sponsor, she wrote down all of the defects that she heard, but she also wrote down all of the assets that I had. And what's really strange is, when she gave me my defects, I was like, oh yeah, I'm all of those things. Self-centered, egotistical, I hate people, I'm judgmental, yeah. And then when she gave me my assets, I cried. And it was almost like I could not believe that the person that I am actually, I'm caring and I'm thoughtful and I set a good example. It was really weird. It almost made me want to crawl out of my skin. But when I went to do my 7th step, I really, really had to be in that moment where I'm like, I really am ready to get rid of all this crap. And what was nice having both the defects and the assets was I could ask for the defects to be removed and the assets to be replacing them. And it was a different feeling. I know that, I have all these defects of character, but they're not the only things about me. I have this set that's inside of me that I can replace it with. And I'm not perfect, so it doesn't always work out the way I want it to. But just relying on that higher power, to do that for me has been really helpful. Right now, I'm kind of still in the middle of working on my 8 and 9. So I have made amends, and some have been painful and some have been easier. But I think the key to that is just really being willing to do it. And to sit down with someone and have your heart racing so fast, but really knowing that you've prayed about it and your higher power is guiding you through it, and just saying the words that you've written down to that person is really powerful. And for 10, 11, and 12, I am always working on them. I am always, every morning, I really have tried my best through example of others to wake up and really be in gratitude of having that day. I've been sober, but I know I still need you to help me stay sober today. And, I say all the prayers that are in the book. And they really help when I'm lost or if I'm tired or if I just don't know what to say. The book is a really good place to go when you're needing those words. And as far as service goes, that has been really, really a big part of what I do now. I am on sponsee restriction until I finish 8 and 9. So I have one girl left who has now started to transition to a new sponsor. And I'm moving from the Raleigh area, so it's a good time for that. So, I'm not actively sponsoring anyone, but I do a lot of fellowship with women, and I am on a committee, and it's been a lot of fun, like just talking to people about being a drunk and how awful that was, like, and how bad I didn't want to admit it. Like, thinking like, no, I'm good, I got this, and having my life literally just fall apart like quicksand through my hands, and not knowing what to do, and finding this program of Alcoholics Anonymous and actually being willing to do it, being honest, open-minded, and willing. The how of AA, like that's how I tried to do AA, and it's how I try to live my life. And I'm not perfect at it. I have a lot of people who keep me in check when I'm starting to feel weird. Last night, I left a meeting and my voice was kind of weird. And I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I get my voice back tomorrow to speak. And they were like, so you're already in tomorrow, like you've already gotten ready for bed, washed your face, gone to bed, woken up, said your prayers, eaten your breakfast, gone to work, driven to Southern Pines. You're there. Why don't we just stay here? And I really appreciated that, because so many times, like, we want to just future surf. The only time that is beneficial for me to future surf is if I'm thinking about taking a drink. And then I have to say, what's going to happen? But, at the end of the day, like, this book and this program really has just taught me how to live my life. And I could not live a life without doing these things, like full-heartedly wanting to change. So, if you're new and like you don't know how to stay sober or what to do, don't think about it. Just ask someone else who has done it, and they will tell you how to do it. But really, it boils down to reading the book and just being willing to do something different, and to apply that one day at a time, because we only have today, right now, and here. So with that, I would like to leave you with my favorite part of the book, which is on page 164 at the end of A Vision for You. And it says, our book is meant to be suggestive only. We realize we only know a little. God will constantly disclose more to you and to us. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. The answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously, you cannot transmit something you haven't got. See to it that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then.